let's see, Doc Bagley from Strafford, Vermont. Doc and volunteers from not only Strafford, but some of the neighboring communities have been partnering with an organization in Maine to build window inserts, and we're going to hear more about that right now. So.
Hello all. I hope first of all that you're all safe and healthy under the circumstances as of late. Also, I'd like to thank Window Dressers of Maine to start with for expanding their program, their nonprofit program to us here in Vermont. Just a little history, they've been in place since 2010. Including this year and the Vermont participants, there have been over 40,000 inserts built since day one. Roughly 33 workshops in Maine and 5 workshops here in Vermont in 2019. I'm going to speak briefly about the program and then show some photos of our community workshop and some of the steps that were taken in the community workshop, and then I guess I'll answer some questions if anyone has them. A little history. We learned about window dressers, a few of us, just through YouTube videos, and then at the VCAN conference in 2018, Bill Cadogan from Window Dressers Maine was at the conference and spoke to various people in different communities about starting up a program. Both Strafford and Thetford had worked together in the Solarize Upper Valley program, and we've known each other for quite some time, and we thought it would be beneficial for us to collaborate on this program as well. We made further contact with window dressers, and they provided us with local coordinators and measuring team guides, which got us started. These were manuals for those two positions, if you will. And within the local coordinators guide, there's a number of volunteer coordination positions that really need to be filled during this program. One being the local coordinators, outreach coordinator, volunteer coordinator, measuring coordinator, then the measurers themselves, and then through the program we found it's also good to have a food coordinator for the lunches. So after that we created a group of local coordinators. There were 5 or 6 of us. And we also reached out to our energy committees and such and devised measuring teams. This would be 2 people going out together to homeowners to take measurements of windows. From there, we set up a training with Laura Seaton, who is the director of Window Dressers Maine. And she came in late May and introduced us to the WD Measure Window Dressers measuring software, how to use the lasers that they provide for measuring the windows, and their standard recommendations on how to proceed with site visits. At the time, we also discussed community workshop time, and time frames of late December, early January were discussed at that point. And it was really based on Window Dressers' cut schedule. They had a limited facility at the time. They've since moved their facility to a larger facility in Rockland, Maine, and have larger capabilities. It was recommended to us at the time that we limit ourselves to 75 to 100 inserts per town. We ended up doing about 116 inserts per town, along with 17 inserts for Two Rivers Ottaquechee Resource Commission. Our focus was on income sensitive recipients. Strafford, in making up their budget, decided to pursue 50% low income recipients, and with the idea that depending on how much money was raised through grants and donations, we would try to increase that number. Thetford, on the other hand, focused 100% on income-sensitive recipients. Strafford ended up at 63%, 10 out of 16 of the recipients, and Thetford ended up at 99%, 15 out of 16, 81% overall. Window Dressers Maine in 2018 provided inserts to about 33% of their recipients in all the towns that they work with. As I mentioned, we built 17 inserts for Two Rivers out of Quechee. They were inquiring even before we got going, and we felt that it was a good fit for us to participate. We know the folks over there, and they've done a lot of great work for us as well. Just as a note, the subsidized recipients, there's two different types of frames. One is a pure pine finish, natural finish. The other one is a white painted frame. And the subsidized recipients were limited to 10 of the natural pine inserts per year. When we were determining how to devise who the recipients would be in the subsidized category, we used the capstone income levels for subsidized weatherization, free weatherization, as a guideline. Then moving on to promotion, it was done primarily through the listserv. We felt that because of the limitation of how many we could do this first year, our promotion wasn't as heavy as it could have been, but we did make postings to the listserv quite frequently. And we did a mailing through Capstone's LIHEAP recipients. Those are the folks that receive assistance for home heating fuels. We did a press release with the Valley News. Both towns did presentations at their senior lunches. Announcements were made at the churches in town. And in Strafford, we have a 4th of July celebration every year, and we've included having a Strafford Energy Committee booth there, and did some promotion at that point as well. We pursued grant funding through New England Grassroots Environmental Fund and Mascoma Bank. We applied for NEGAF's seed grant, which is up to $1,000. They make a recommendation that that's what you do when you're starting a program. For this coming year, which we plan on participating again, both towns have applied for the NEGAF GROW grant, and we also went to Mascoma Bank, local banks for us here, for funding. And then we also received funds from private donors in town, and both the grants and these funds made it totally possible for us to move forward. So we started window measurements around September 1st, giving income sensitive folks priority until about October 15th, and then we opened the program to all. We ran the measurements into early November, and then made final payments to window dressers for the frames at the end of November. And payments were made by the participants who paid in full at the time of the measurements being taken, and also anybody that was a recipient of subsidized funds who made a donation would make a payment at that time if possible. And then we had various organizations. Strafford had their town office hold the funds. Thetford had another organization holding the funds, and a check was cut for the balance to window dressers for the subsidized funds sent out. During the measurement phase, we discussed the community workshop. and the space that was going to happen. And we were lucky to have the North Thetford Church as a space. It was a wonderful space with a kitchen so that we could participate with lunch as well. And that's a big part of it as far as the community outreach. We locked in January 4th to the 9th as a timeline, and had to work with 3 other communities after us and 1 before us on coordinating the equipment and jigs that were provided by window dressers. We arranged for a December 18th delivery, and luckily a couple from Maine was visiting family members in Vermont. They brought all the frames over for all but the Glover, Craftsbury, Greensboro group that happened before us. And we took delivery, and then myself and my wife actually went up to Glover, received the jigs and some various materials from them, and brought them back down for our workshop. We started the workshop by having a handful of people make all the frames initially, and then with listings of all the participants and what frames they received printed out and sent to us by window dressers. We then stacked each recipient's frames alphabetically around the room for us to then pick from and start to build. The local coordinators posted requests for volunteers to help with the community workshop in the early fall and again closer to the workshop. All the insert recipients were required to volunteer their time building the inserts and to help on-site logistics or help with on-site logistics, whether it be sign-in, lunch cleanup, or providing food. Window dressers provided a sign-up software package for us, for the volunteers to go to make their time slots. And we had 2 4-hour work sessions with a noontime community lunch each day. We had 125 volunteers, including recipients, sign up for the 6-day community workshop. It was pretty amazing. And then we also had mentors, Jack Sumberg from Glover and Kevin Grigori from Craftsbury, come down as they had already gone through their workshop and helped us work through the stations and familiarize ourselves with the setup. So once we completed the community workshop, and I'll move into a quick presentation on that. We developed a online survey that we sent out to all the participants and had some very favorable responses from that, and also some good suggestions for next year. One of the challenges being making sure we had enough frames to finish throughout the entire workshop time. We realized that we could complete about 50 of these inserts per day, but the reality was we needed to scale back to about 40. So I would say that's an important thing to remember. So right now we're hoping to do, we are planning on doing this again in 2020. We hope to participate in late summer, early fall in this. We're really bound by the coronavirus as to timing. Window dressers is pretty much shut down right now, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. And I just want to jump onto a shared screen PowerPoint briefly and show you some of the process that we participated in at our community workshop.
While you're doing that, Doc, I'll just say thank you. And we've got a couple questions that have come in that you can hopefully answer briefly for us when you're done showing pictures. But
Okay.
If you move through your pictures quickly, we can get to more questions.
You got it. So what is an insert? And I don't go through this. I think most of you know what these inserts look like, but this happens to be one of the white frames.
We're not seeing your screen yet, Doc.
Oh, you're not? Okay, hang on a sec.
Just try one more time for me.
Bear with me, sorry.
Okay, if it doesn't work, I can post these online and people can check them out later.
Yeah, I'm hitting share screen and I'm not. Let me just try.
There we go. It looks like it's working now.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. And again, just quickly, so we don't run out of time for everyone else.
Right, sorry. Here's the frame. This happens to have a strut anything over 48 inches long in either direction. Any warpage of the frame. This shows just a friction fit on the frame itself before and after inserted. This information is just some info that was taken at one of the install sections in Maine, and it just showed the difference in temperature in the room after the insert was placed. And I'll move right along and not get into all the environmental benefits unless there's a question. So the community workshop, you can see we had a number of stations set up and with various tasks at each. We did some frame assembly beforehand, as I mentioned. You can see one of our volunteers cutting a strut. And the frames come in all pre-cut and labeled from window dressers. They have an automated system that does all that for them. And they provide all the jigs, including those blocks you see under the feet of the tables to raise the tables up. First step after the frames are built, applying double-sided tape then going to putting plastic on the frames, the first set of plastic. This is done twice. Then you cut away the excess plastic. Once both sides are done, it goes to a station that actually has a heat gun under a tent, and that shrinks the plastic onto the frame. From there, there's a clear tape that's installed on the frame to make the connection stronger and more durable. It then goes to the jigs that apply the foam, and they run through channels, and the adhesive sticks to the side of the frame. As I mentioned before, the lunch was a big part of our group participation, and we had great turnout from both morning and afternoon groups. Moving right along, if you have any questions, email the director at windowdressers.org and check out their webpage. There's a frequently asked questions page that's very helpful, and thank you for your time.
The other questions, let's see, is there a maximum size to the windows that you can make, and is 48 inches the max?
No, the windows can be pretty much any size. What happens, first of all, if they're larger, they'll have the struts across either vertically or horizontally. And if it's an insert that's going in, say, a French door space, they'll split them and have two inserts that come together in the middle. And basically what they're doing is not applying the foam to one of the edges of one of those inserts, so that when they go together, they will cover the space.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see. And there were a couple of other questions that folks marked as answered about the cost of these. Is there a really quick summary of what the typical window costs and what you try to subsidize for each of those for those low-income families?
Yes, the average window is about $40 per window. That's the natural pine. If they were white painted frames, they were $50+ per frame.
Got it.
And we subsidized at whatever level the person felt that they could handle. There is a request for donation to the program. Many of the people donated in the $10 per frame range when they were subsidized.